So our journey into modern American history continues. Where we left off, we talked about George Bush, 9/11, and the War on Terror. We did that very quickly, we kind of rushed through. In the poll, the majority of you said that you think that you got it, we're ready to move on. So very quickly, I want to just talk about how as President Bush, as his presidency continued, and as the War on Terror continued, it became increasingly less and less popular. So that by the time that 2008 came, when President Bush, his term was over, and they were going to elect a new president, there was a real itching for some change, that they wanted some, American people wanted some new leadership in the Oval Office. The election of 2008 brings us then to the campaign of Barack Obama, who was a senator from Illinois. Barack Obama had this very quick path to leadership. In 2004, he was actually just a state senator. So in Illinois, we have a state senate and a state house, just like there's a United States House and Senate in Washington, D.C. And he was just a state senator in 2004. And he gave a speech in 2004 that has become very famous that I will leave a link to. I will include a clip of it because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But it really launched him onto the national stage. People saw him give this speech and they were like, whoa, who is this guy? Because whether you like Obama or not, it's hard to argue that he is a very effective speaker. So in 2004, he's just a state senator. In 2006, he gets elected to the United States Senate. And in 2008, he decides that he's going to run for president. Now here's a little bit of a government lesson for you, that when people run for president, first you have to become the nominee of the one party. So a bunch of Democrats will battle with each other to become the Democratic nominee, a bunch of Republicans will battle with other Republicans to become the Republican nominee, and then it will be Democrat versus Republican in the general election in November. This probably should sound familiar to you, that Joe Biden is seemingly has won for the Democratic nominee. He hasn't officially won it, but he's the only person that's left still running. But it was Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and all these other Democrats trying to be the one nominee. And then eventually in November, it will be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, a Democrat versus a Republican. So this same process was going on in 2008. And Barack Obama was kind of this new star. He didn't have a lot of political experience because he just became a United States Senator in 2006. It's 2008, that means he's only had 2 years of kind of national leadership experience. This is compared to one of his Democratic rivals, who we will talk more about tomorrow, Hillary Clinton. She obviously was First Lady under President Bill Clinton in the 1990s, and then she became a United States Senator from New York. The Clintons in American politics and in Democratic politics really have a lot of power. And it was kind of assumed in 2008 that Hillary Clinton was automatically going to be the nominee. People thought she was going to have a lot of money, a lot of support, and she was going to be the nominee. But then here comes Senator Barack Obama. He kind of comes onto the stage and kind of overpowers her. What's interesting about this is there was a lot of enthusiasm for people who supported Hillary Clinton and people who supported Barack Obama because of their historical candidacies. No matter which one of them won, it was going to be pretty historic that there was going to be the first female nominee of a major party or the first black nominee of a major party. So all of these Democrats are battling in elections that are called primaries to trying to become the Democratic nominee. After a long contested primary, Barack Obama just edges out Hillary Clinton and wins. So Barack Obama wins, he becomes the Democratic nominee, but he still hasn't won the presidency. He still needs to go up against a Republican. So after he becomes the Democratic nominee, he goes up against the Republican nominee, who went through a very similar process just on the Republican side, and that was Senator John McCain from Arizona. John McCain has been in politics for a long, long time. He just died just a few years ago, but he had been in politics for decades. He had run for president before, and had really built up this reputation among the country as what they called a maverick, someone who was willing to work hard on big issues, to work with Democrats and Republicans to solve these problems. Obviously, that's part of an issue for the Obama campaign because he's someone who has just been a senator for 2 years. He doesn't have all of that experience that John McCain had. So what the Obama campaign tried to capitalize on was the frustration and the anger that Americans had with President Bush and the War on Terror. They really campaigned as Obama being this change candidate. Yes, he didn't have a lot of experience, leading the national politics, but he was coming from a different perspective. He is just new to politics, he has fresh ideas, and in a time that Americans really wanted change, he was going to promise that change. How did that strategy work out? Well, for that, we have to head to the primary source corner. So as you might know, the United States uses a system to elect president called the Electoral College. And people are debating and have debated for a long time if that's an effective way to win the presidency, but it makes for a very nice map to look at when we have presidential elections. How it works is each state has a number of electoral votes, and then the person who's running for president wins all of the state's electoral votes. You can paint a map blue or red, blue for Democrats, red for Republicans, to see who won that state and all of their electoral votes. So take a look at the electoral map from 2008 of Senator Barack Obama versus Senator John McCain as they were running for president. And you can see it's kind of hard to look at the map just spatially first because it looks like there's a fair amount of blue states, there's a fair amount of red states, it's hard to actually tell. But then when you actually look at the number of electoral votes, that Barack Obama really knocked it out of the park here. So you need 270 electoral votes to win the presidency. That's when you have a majority. And he had almost 100 more than that. And as you can see there the popular vote. He got 10 million more votes than John McCain. And this isn't to say that John McCain was a weak candidate or a bad candidate, but that messaging of Barack Obama, that hope and change, changing the way things of a Republican administration, obviously really had some impact. So when we interpret this map to see what it means, obviously we can see it means that Barack Obama won the presidency in 2008. But because he won by such a wide margin, we can see that he really won with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of people were excited to vote for him. Alright, so you can be elected president and then so what? You get a really cool chair, you get to fly in a plane, and you get to call yourself the president. But let's take a look at what Barack Obama really decided to focus on as president. What you should know is that realistically, if a president can have 8 years in office, that's the max amount of time that they can be president, they really only have time to have 3 big priorities. For Barack Obama, one of the big priorities was ending the war in Iraq. Kind of ending this war on terror, this unclear war of how can you have a war on terror that's not a country or things like that. He really wanted to pull back the military from the Middle East. Was he successful in that? To some extent. I mean, his presidency just ended about 3 years ago. So historians are still looking back to see if he was successful in his goals. In some ways, yes, officially the war on terror ended in 2013, but there are still American troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, among other countries around there. So depending on your definition of success, it's hard to say with that goal. Barack Obama's second goal was in 2008 was also the financial crash, which hopefully you will learn more about next year in an economics class, but really the economy just took a tank and it's now called the Great Recession, which should sound familiar because it's the worst economic condition that America has been since the Great Depression. So we're talking super high unemployment, we're talking high inflation, the nation was producing less, and people were really suffering. Banks were failing, auto industries were failing, and people just needed some emergency relief. So when he became president, he did sign some emergency stimulus, kind of similar to the way that we're seeing emergency stimulus passing Congress and being signed by the president during the coronavirus pandemic, that helped Americans out, and the economy did get back on track. So most historians looking back at 2008 now say that that was a success for him. And then his third policy goal was healthcare, which probably shouldn't be surprising to you because I'm sure you've heard the term Obamacare before. And in 2010, it was passed. The Affordable Care Act is what it was technically called, but it was nicknamed Obamacare, was passed and became law. This is done with the help of a lot of Democrats in Congress because a lot of voters, as we saw in the primary source corner, were enthusiastic to vote for President Obama. And when they went and voted, they voted for other Democrats. So there was a Democratic president, there was a Democratic majority in the House of Representatives, and there was a Democratic majority in the Senate as well. So they had a lot of Democrats who could work together and who agreed on their policy ideas about health care, and they were able to pass the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. This is still something that's politically contentious. President Trump and other Republicans have vowed to dismantle Obamacare, to take some parts away from it, and the Supreme Court has ruled certain parts of it unconstitutional. So this is still something that's still in the air about what Obamacare is and how it's going to function within our country. But the fact that it was pulled together by Democrats and passed was considered a success, and it did get a lot more Americans health care that didn't have it before. But perhaps more importantly than all of this, and the fact in 2020 that I haven't even brought this up until right now is pretty astounding, that obviously he's the first African American president, which is a very big deal. And a nation that once enslaved people that looked like President Obama, America was now electing him as leader of the free world, as people like to say. However, of course, then you know America's ugly history with race, that President Obama faced certain criticisms and certain attacks that were based on his race and not on his politics or policies. I'm sure that you have seen some of these online and they truly show the really ugly side of America. Of course, just these ones based on race. You can disagree with President Obama's politics, that is certainly your prerogative, but these really nasty ones that just target him based on his race really show the ugly side of America. Nonetheless, though, President Obama will go down in history for many reasons, but one for sure will be the first African-American president of the United States. And there is kind of your quick primer on his election in 2008. He was then reelected in 2012, and he was president then through the election of 2016. There are many, many more things that I can say. There are many more details about him and his policies and his wife and other things that happened during his presidency, but that's just the short version here. What you're going to take a look at today is one of President Obama's campaign posters. You're going to look to see what the message of it is, if you think it was effective. What do you think of it? And then I want you to take a look at some exit polling. And what exit polling is when people go and vote, at some polling stations, they have people outside who say, hello, like, what's your age? Are you, what's your ethnicity? What's your religion? And if you don't mind me telling me, who did you vote for in this election? And so they can see what groups of people supported which candidates. So you're going to look to see, in the 2008 election, did white people support Obama or McCain? Did people who were young, 18 to 29, did they support Obama or McCain? People who were Democrats, did they support Obama or McCain? And I just want you to take a look at that and answer some questions about that, because I think it will enlighten for you about what type of people were excited to vote for President Obama. And I want you to keep that in mind tomorrow then when we talk about the election of Donald Trump, how some of that maybe has shifted. That is everything for today then. So everybody, thank you, good luck, work hard, stay safe, and stay awesome.